Speaking of Laurie's winter programming course, I figured I might interject with just a short anecdote of a story from an experience that I had. And I loved the course so much that I said, gosh, how do I get to TA that course and go back and go play again in the woods of New Hampshire and ski and get to teach others how to ski. And one of the parts of that is that you get to be a food partner or a cook partner with Laurie Gullion. What an honor, but also what pressure it gets put on you when Laurie Gullion, because she has, if you haven't got a chance to be out in the field with her, she has a love and a passion for eating really well while out in the field. And so I knew that there was pressure on. Like, that was my chance to really strut my stuff and show off. And among other meals that I was very proud of, there was one meal that I thought I would be very proud of. And so it was a week where a couple other students in the course, they'd packed some liquid eggs, and Laurie and I watched as they were pulling those out of their bags in the winter course, and they were frozen solid. And so we saw folks like chiseling away the cardboard off of these frozen liquid eggs, and then trying to thaw in their fry bakes. And I thought to myself, gosh, like, smug as heck, I was thinking, I've got this dialed. So the whole week, I had been tucking it just in my sleeping bag and making sure that I had those liquid eggs, not frozen, but very much thawed. In fact, far too thawed, because we had ourselves a phenomenal breakfast. Really enjoyed the meal we had onions, peppers, cheese, scramble. I think we had some bacon in there as well. It was delicious. It was an amazing scramble for the final morning of the winter ski adventure program, and that morning was also accompanied by many trips into the woods where Laurie and I were tagging in and tagging out based on our needs to evacuate our bowels for whatever cultured in those eggs as they sat nestled next to me as I was experiencing that week. So thank you, Laurie. I think the piece that I share from that story is that Laurie, the entire time, even though it's absolutely my fault, and I've near crippled both the instructor and the teaching assistant for a course, as far as risk management, that's bad, in case you all haven't thought about that. And for that particular that day, Laurie, every time she came out of the woods, big old grin on her face, and just a knowledge and appreciation that, Johnson, you tried. But boy, am I never going to let you forget this one. So I appreciate not only that you were willing to be with me, and that most of the meals she described that she was happy with everything that we were eating, including that very breakfast. She continued to be happy even though I had quite drastically negatively affected her day. So I appreciate that. Great. I'd love to highlight a little bit about, as we transition between speakers here, just how wide the network is that Laurie affects. So those of us who are here in this program, we've had the opportunity to connect with Laurie, whether it's because she convinced you to join the major or because you've had shared experiences in the backcountry with her. But one of the things that I've found since leaving the University of New Hampshire is that almost everywhere I go, if I'm going to be paddling, if I'm going to be skiing, if I'm going to be in the backcountry in any way, I've found people that have connections to Laurie Gullion in some way. And it's pretty phenomenal just how deep those roots go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read an excerpt from a book. But this book, one, I would highly recommend it read if you all are familiar with some of Laurie's paddling expeditions up north. There's an excerpt from here in this book that describes a little bit about one of Laurie's first expeditions up north. This book is titled Rivers Running Free, and it's a century of women's canoeing adventures. And this book is shared with me by a friend of mine, Emily Bellhurth, who's now an elementary school teacher for the Chewonki Foundation, where I currently work. And I found this just beside her bed, because this is one of the books that she reads most often when she's looking for inspiration. And I don't think she's ever met you, Laurie, but she continues to consider you as an idol. So I'll read this excerpt here. It's titled Bugs. The struggling black flies drowned in my chicken and rice dinner. I debated whether to pick them painstakingly from the bowl, but the layer of blackness obscured the meal completely. The flies demonstrated, without a doubt, that they were the victors in this battle. I ate the exotic garnish, my raging appetite muted by the unwanted extra protein. I was more tired than I'd ever been. When I decided to join this 1,200-mile canoeing expedition into Canada's untraveled barren lands, I hadn't realized the toughest challenge would be the mental stress rather than physical endurance. By the way, this is written by Laurie Gullion. And she continues, I wrote these words shortly after the end of my first trip to the Barrens. I vowed that I would never go again. It was a beautiful land and an exciting adventure, but the hardships were challenges only to be met once. Given the opportunity to return to the North 2 years later, why did I accept so quickly, so joyfully, and with such yearning? An acquaintance asked the same question with painful bluntness. I read your words about eating those flies, and it sounded horrible. It sounded like you hated it. I can't understand why you went back. Well, I stalled, shifting uncomfortably. I did hate it on some days, but there are scattered images in my travels in the Barrens, pictures and sounds and smells which shadow me every day. I learned so much and lived so wildly and achieved things beyond my greatest expectations, beyond the bugs. But the bugs are much easier to describe. Yeah, that's Laurie Gullion right there. Woo! So one of the things that I love is that when I go into a bookstore, I can find books that have excerpts from Laurie, excerpts about Laurie. I can go hang out at a friend's house and find on their bedside table a book that happens to be, this book naturally opens up to that section, and that's not by me. And so I found that whether it's right here in our community from the University of New Hampshire, or there's a whole stream of trip leaders from a camp that's since closed down, but Darrow, that leads backcountry expeditions and particularly canoe expeditions. And there's a whole community out there that worships Laurie Gullion and hasn't had the opportunity to meet her or interact with her or be inspired directly through coursework or field work with her. But her word continues to inspire those well beyond just her immediate reaches and direct touch points.